Okay. Good morning, everyone, or any time of the day for those who are watching on demand. Thank you for joining our second virtual lunch and learn of the month of May. I'm Matt Lowy, your chapter president for PMI-Montgomery County. Just a few opening remarks before we pass it on to our presenters. Our chapter scholarship program, which has been a 21-year tradition of two $1,500 scholarships, was drawn at our last meeting. So congratulations to students from Walter Johnson High School and Winston Churchill High School. And those checks have already been received and presented at scholarship ceremonies. So $1,500 doesn't go where it used to with higher education, but it helps out a little bit. So, okay, we hope everyone has a great Memorial Day weekend coming up. Some people have already started theirs, at least in my workforce, but coming out of the weekend next Tuesday, we have another virtual lunch and learn on Friday with Miss Mariah Bryant. She'll be presenting on professional branding, and if you find yourself in a LinkedIn rut or struggling a little bit with what your brand is today, this will be a good presentation. Miss Bryant's a career coach for Anne Arundel County's workforce development, and that'll be next Friday to end the week. Then the following Wednesday, our next monthly chapter event will be featuring Mr. Chris Herbert, who is the Director of Program Management for Madison Square Garden Entertainment. They're most recently known for the Las Vegas Sphere and also the initiation phase for the Sphere at the National Harbor, which will be in PG County. We have our co-vice president of programs, Mr. Bill Ziegler, on. Bill, do you want to add anything for Mr. Herbert's presentation?
No, but it should be an exciting presentation. It's also it's the first virtual dinner presentation we've had. He's currently in Florida, and so he'll be presenting to us virtually, even whether you're inside the dinner meeting or you're online virtually, you'll see the same thing.
Yep, and we're still hopeful we can get somebody from the PG County National Harbor project, either from the county or with the group that has the construction contract for that. But should be a interesting one. The Sphere was kind of uncharted territory around the globe for that type of entertainment venue. So what went into it from the schedule and the Gantt chart and all those fun project management nerd things that we like so much. Okay, if you're in the Frederick area, also our partnership with Hood College and the Frederick National Laboratory for Cancer Research has a competing event. So with summer starting and schools out, a lot of that first Wednesday of the month is more busier than usual, but that'll be Professor Dr. David Gerzik presenting on how AI broke project management. So this is kind of more of a different take than we've heard so far, but a good perspective. We will be able to get that recording shared with everyone. So, but if you are in Frederick, and since our Sphere presentation will be available online, this may be a better choice for your needs. Okay, for any interested golfers, one of our chapter members is on the leadership committee for the Alliance Secure for cavernous malformation. That scramble event will be on June 8th, and registration is still open. More to come on that on our newsletter, but it goes to a great cause. If you're free this evening, the Family Action Network has a book discussion featuring Dr. Nicholas Epley in conversation with Mr. David Brooks, who has a lot of thought leadership books of his own. That'll be at 8 o'clock online to talk about Dr. Epley's new book, A Little More Social, How Small Choices Create Unexpected Happiness, Health, and Connection. We have the registration link on our LinkedIn group, as well as the website, if you're interested in that. Our chapter members, which right now is 2,050, have been busy getting things done and getting certified, so congratulations to them. The PMP is still at least the entry-level standard in this profession, so it's good to see that those are getting the PMP. And then the CPMAI, which is the newest AI certification that PMI has. AI really doesn't have that gold standard of a CISSP or a PMP yet, so I think there's AWS and Google and some of the more AI providers have certifications for their offerings, but this was good in terms of understanding the different project management phases and focus areas for AI projects. It's a $600 to $700 commitment, but if your company has an educational allowance, this is a great opportunity to use that and kind of stand out among your peers in the profession right now. Okay, if you need PDUs, we're one of the few chapters in the PMI global landscape that puts 95% of our content on our chapter YouTube channel, including today's presentation. So if you need background noise when you're working, there's PDU claim codes and a lot of good offerings. We're doing a website recrafting this summer. So in terms of looking for a specific topic or things of that nature, our video library will be easier to navigate going forward. We're also one of the few PMI chapters, along with PMI-WDC, that has our own Toastmasters group. So if you're interested in public speaking, this is a great opportunity to kind of craft that. Even the best public speakers aren't perfect. And if you look at the stand-up comedy world, when they try out, new material, they're going to small clubs that are a safe space. Even if you're on a professional speaking circuit, you could still use a Toastmasters group to try some new programs out, and this would be a good opportunity. No lifetime commitments, or there is dues if you do become a member, but if you just want to dip your toe in the water, next Wednesday, we have a Zoom session for that. Our sister chapters around the DMV are doing good things. PMI-WDC has their their monthly chapter meeting on Wednesday, June 18th. That'll be Dr. Linda McIntosh presenting Understanding Key Elements of Building a Responsible AI. PMI Baltimore next Wednesday has their monthly division meeting, Battle-Tested Planning, How the Marine Corps Transforms Project Success, which will be presented by Dr. Jay Wagner. Our presenters today know about Marine Corps success, so they'll probably tell you about that. And then PMI Silver Spring is offering a virtual event by Miss Melissa Dinwiddie, presenting virtually from California on creating the impossible, unleashing innovation through play, imperfection, and rapid learning. That's on the same day as our events, but if that topic strikes you, we'd love for you to support as many PMI chapters as you can. Okay, our featured speakers for this afternoon are Ms. Brittany Chiang and Mr. Lucas Flatter of Flatter Inc. They may or may not be siblings. We'll talk about that during the presentation. But I had the opportunity to meet Ms. Chiang when she was still in college at BU. Her father gave me my first opportunity out of the Marine Corps. And back 19 years ago, people weren't breaking down doors to hire me. So like when you look at your life, if one thing doesn't happen, where do you end up? If that opportunity to become a Flatter associate back in 2007 doesn't happen, I might re-enlist, and who knows where I am. And 19 years later, people aren't breaking down the door to hire me again, but we found a good place in the Air Force manpower and reserve HR space, and I've had the opportunity to work with Flatter Inc. in that space too. So everything goes full circle. She is now the CEO of the company, as well as a PMP, certified associate coach, which we'll get into a little bit with the subject matter today, as well as on several advisory boards within the Stafford Fredericksburg community. Mr. Flatter is a chief enterprise architect of the company, a PMP and MBA as well, and they've already talked to me about how they can get their PDUs for all the prep work they're doing today. So just like a good PMP, you want to get credit for everything you attend. So we'll turn the floor over to them, and we appreciate everyone joining today. In terms of rules of engagement, we do want this to be interactive. If you could use the raise hand feature, and we'll moderate chat as well. So welcome, Flatter Inc.
Awesome. Thanks, Matt, for that intro. And you're being very humble about your technical abilities. And it's been really cool to see you in this leadership role with the PMI chapter. But yeah, you're an impressive one too. So thanks for that introduction. Like Matt said, I'm Brittany. I'm the Chief Executive Officer of Flatter Incorporated. Lucas is going to pull up some slides here. And yes, we are siblings. It's a family-owned intergenerational company. We're kind of that mid-size defense contractor in the National Capital Region. Been around for 24 years or so now. And yeah, I mean, 3 years ago when ChatGPT came out, I just had kind of a lightning storm of ideas and knew that I wanted to build using AI and to also, be a shepherd for our defense customers on how to best use this technology. It changes so quickly. I think you really need some subject matter experts in your life that kind of bring you along into what the technology can do and how it can best impact your organization. So that was kind of where Persona Ops and the idea came from. Lucas, you want to say hello and pull up the slides?
Yep. Hello, everybody. Lucas, I will share the slides. One moment. Is everybody able to see?
Yeah,
Okay.
sure, sir.
So we'll be talking about the platform that we're building at Flatter Inc. called PersonaOPPs. Essentially, it's a platform that enables conversational interaction with AI personas. Um, Many of the most straightforward use cases are going to be in training scenarios where you might want to practice a crucial conversation or a conversation that's structured in a certain way. And then our tool will let the users set up kind of like evaluation criteria. So you'll have a conversation with an AI persona, in our case, a coaching conversation, and then our tool will analyze how effective you were in the various International Coaching Federation proficiencies. Um, so just generally with AI, just to start in the AI world before we go directly into persona ops, in order to have a really good repeatable process that keeps the human in the loop with AI applications, you want some clear structure, whether it's your data or a user experience. You want to be able to kind of have some governance over the results. What are the guardrails in place? Are there limits to how people are interacting with the tool? You want some degree of repeatability. You don't want the AI to kind of give you completely randomized results. So in our case, we're doing a lot of work to make sure that the personas remain consistent and that you can have realistic conversations with them, but they're not going to wildly veer off of their boundaries in terms of personality. And then finally, we want some way to measure the effectiveness. It's one thing to say we want to be doubly as efficient as we were last quarter or last year. But if you're not measuring a baseline, then bringing in automation and then kind of re-baselining and saying, okay, we've improved in these specific ways. Efficiency without those measurements doesn't necessarily get you the results that you want and need. And PersonaOPPs is built with these kinds of constraints in mind, so structure, governance, repeatability, and measurability. So we in the government world, I'm sure a lot of us are aware that we're often using acronyms, jargon, nomenclature. So even in PersonaOPPs, we're kind of taking that same page out, and so we have our own acronym, which is OPP in the name PersonaOPPs, which stands for Operational Profile Pathway. And a way to think about that is just that the operation is the domain or the area which we're trying to solve a problem. The profile would be who is the human in the loop and who is going to be represented by an AI persona. And then the pathway being what are we going to do with the information that we get from the conversation. So you can imagine in a training scenario, you want to get out of it your proficiency level in various, how did I do in terms of active listening? How did I do in terms of maintaining coaching composure and things like that? And so maybe your outcome is just that score itself, and I want to improve those scores over time. And also thinking about ways that if I'm practicing with this as part of a classroom, we more than likely have a course administrator that is going to be looking at the competencies of the students over time. So part of the pathway is that, it's being used by my supervisor if I'm a student in a course, but it's also being used on the individual level because, as students, we want to improve and get better when we're practicing and doing homework and things like that. So just on the left here, the op would define kind of how the conversation might flow. So in a coaching conversation, the client might have a personal or professional problem that they want to discuss. So we kind of structure it in a way where they do have a specific topic that they'll want to discuss. But just like a real person, they're not going to instantaneously kind of open up and be emotional and emotionally vulnerable and describe every little detail about the scenario. So the structure is in place in that, as the coach who's practicing using the platform, will use my coaching skills to kind of coax additional details, just as if I'm speaking with a human that, we need to break the ice and then kind of dig into things naturally. It's got its own scoring metrics depending on the op. So a coaching conversation is going to be evaluated much differently than an interview or hospitality training. And on the right, we have a couple of the existing ops that we've created. So we'll be showing you the coaching ICF aligned op in a moment. We also have things for interview prep, hospitality training. So in federal simulations like security clearance interviews and incident reporting with the Border Protection Agency. So that's just a couple of the examples, but the platform is built in a way that we are able to kind of configure new ops depending on the customer's needs. Um, we have a hand up, PMI Montco chapter. Go ahead.
Yep, it's me. I thought what you guys did with the Marine Corps 250th birthday last year was an interesting approach. I know Mr. Ziegler knows who Chesty Puller is. Do you guys just want to give a verbal share of how you came up with that idea and then the feedback you got?
Totally. Let me just go back here. So yeah, in terms of what kind of personas we can create, well, the coaching ones are kind of on purpose, not based on real people, so that we're not, leaking, personally identifiable information or just, privacy concerns and things like that. But we also have the ability to create sort of digital clones of existing people in our organization and customers when it's appropriate. And Matt was mentioning that we've done one of the Marine Corps legend Chesty Puller based on, all of the historical information that's available in through our research, and kind of came up with a grisly voice that we thought matched his personality best. On the Marine Corps 250th birthday, we put that on our site so that, Marines and interested people could kind of say, hey, what was it like, your experience in, the Korean War and things like that. And he was, as you would expect, very gruff and, the testosterone filled responses of, you just gotta suck it up and things like that. But it was really interesting. I think we put it in front of a lot of Marines and in the ball event that Flatter was hosting last year. Do you want
Yeah.
to touch on that, Brittany?
Sure. Yeah. One of the things that was surprising to me on a digital persona was that, we built it in a robust way. I expected people to want to break it, right? Like, let me get Chesty Puller to say something inappropriate and record it. Or I was kind of imagining all these bad actors and what they would do with the persona. So we tried to put a lot of guardrails on it. But every single interaction with Chesty Puller as the persona had kind of like a reverence for who he was and a respect even for his rank. So we were really surprised and delighted by how the user just so easily adopted him as Chesty Puller, and really just from a perspective of curiosity and learning of, what was your most interesting lesson from the Marine Corps, and what do you think about what's going on in modernity? And it was really neat to see some of the usage.
Thanks. Okay.
Yeah, and that's a good question about legal hoops, estates, etc. And there's a whole body of knowledge that's kind of in the public domain, and those are the personas that are easiest to tackle. I think we did a little bit of research on whether or not someone owned the Chesty Puller persona, and I think we found that there wasn't any, and it was kind of public domain. But we're working with the head chef at the Inn of Little Washington. He's a 3 Michelin star chef, and he gave us permission to recreate him, so that was really neat. And he's going to be doing a Smithsonian exhibit, and we're going to help him with that. Let's
Cool.
move to the next one. I think we're ready.
Okay. Was somebody else saying something? Okay. So this is just a little bit about how our platform is structured. We can onboard on the left organizations or tenants, groups of users. Those groups can subscribe to the different ops. So, if, for example, Brittany mentioned in a Little Washington, they have an op that is a clone of their Michelin star chef, but they also have an op that allows them to train in hospitality skill sets. So, having a conversation and getting evaluated with how well they're responding to customer service interactions. Um, those ops can have different personas. So maybe in the customer service interaction, you want to um, interact with somebody that's planning their anniversary, or somebody that has never visited the restaurant, or somebody that's been back several times. So you might want different personality types, different demographics, anything that might kind of give more, um, you know, color the interactions in, more realistic ways, because, the way I respond to one personality is going to be different from another. And we'll see that when we look at some of the coaching personas, that, some of them are very open-minded and ready to be coached, while other ones are a little bit more apprehensive. So it gives people the opportunity to practice on those different levels. Then, we have users that are interacting with the personas, having conversations, and on the right, those conversations themselves. So just from a technical side, that like we're separating organizational data. So, we're not sharing user information or like analytics from one group of users to another. So if I'm the admin of one organization, I'm going to be able to see my students and cohorts, but not other organizations. Just kind of that separation. In terms of the personas themselves, they have identities. You can think about different Myers-Briggs personality types. They have backgrounds, different demographic information, how old they are, where they're from, and things like that. They'll have instructions that kind of help structure the conversation. So, like I was mentioning about the structure of a coaching conversation, but if they're in the hospitality domain, they're going to have different instructions that tell them about, what are you going to bring up in the conversation about your visit to the restaurant, for example. They each have their own voice IDs. So, if I'm talking to Richard, he's going to sound different than William, or, um, male, female, different ages, different accents, and things like that. Each of our ops is going to evaluate you on different things and have a different output. I mentioned, that different organizations can subscribe to the different ops. So that's what we're talking about with scope there. And then in life cycle, that's just if I have like a course where maybe in the first week we're focusing on active listening, I might share one persona with the group, but as the course goes on, maybe we're opening it up to more over time. So just the idea that different groups have different configurations of which personas they might want on or off and things like that. Um, and this is as technical as I'm gonna get, I promise. But in case anybody is curious about, some of the technologies that are driving this platform, we're a small business and a small team at Flatter, but we're doing some powerful things in terms of the software we're able to build. Part of that is, AI is making software development a lot faster. But just as importantly, we're using a lot of open source software and frameworks that kind of allow us to accelerate our work and have faster iteration, more experimentation. So, things like Vue 3, Supabase, and also, that if or generally if you're using something that has thousands or millions of users and is SOC 2 certified and things like that, that you can reliably use a platform instead of, oh, I'm going to roll my own security into different aspects. So we're kind of not only to do things faster, but in a more secure way that is independently audited and things like that. Then on the right, we're touching on some of the LLMs. We're using some of the AI technologies. The idea here is that, today I like Google Gemini the best in terms of coming up with responses for the personas in the conversations, but next week OpenAI might release an even better model, a faster model. So we're built in a way where we're kind of slotting things in and out as appropriate and experimenting with different AI technologies, and not necessarily spending lots of research and development and investment tuning them ourselves, but trying to use the available technology of, huge tech companies like Google um, and OpenAI and things. A little bit about some of the use or the customers that have been using this platform so far. A lot of our users are in the Air Force going through coach education. We currently have a group of 75 Air Force airmen going through a coaching course and using PersonaOPPs. The most interesting thing, like having a large cohort now, is we're able to see like which users are very enthusiastic and like finding a lot of value in, oh, maybe they're having like hours of conversation when the class said, oh, you could use it for 20 minutes this week. So some people kind of use it as a homework assignment. I'm going to do my one conversation, but others are really enthusiastic about, oh, this is making me more comfortable before I have a real coaching interaction with a human being, or maybe they're seeing their competencies go up and are encouraged by that and things. So it's been really valuable to, have it in front of lots of people. On the right, we mentioned Anna Little Washington, our hospitality customer, that we're building them something unique in terms of delivering that clone of their Michelin star chef. And then on the middle, we have some students as well in the Air Force and the Coast Guard. And so we're about to switch into our live demo. We're going to have a conversation with Richard, who's one of our personas. You'll see how the interaction kind of goes back and forth naturally, like a real conversation. And then we'll give it a minute afterwards to kind of load the analysis and dig into that a little bit. And then just a little bit of PMP kind of lens on the right. Configuration in our case allows us to kind of create these different scenarios without the need to kind of go back to the drawing board and create new code. So in terms of kind of planning out customer interactions or onboarding new customers, it's not entirely R&D and code driven. It's somewhat, let's gather requirements and really dig into what the customer wants and needs. So it's more so finding what makes the particular use case tick in a way through interaction with the customer. You'll see some of the guardrails, in terms of the Richard persona will stay in as character. And the analysis finally will dig into that when it comes up, but I'll throw it over to Brittany.
Okay, I'm going to share.
I think.
Oh, actually, let me stop. I'm going to reshare, make sure I'm sharing the audio. That's important. Share sound. There we go. Can't forget that. Okay, can everyone see the persona off screen?
Yep, sure can.
Okay, great. I'm going to go ahead and call Richard, and we thought this was a great PMP type scenario because he's a leader who's constantly feels like he's putting out fires, and we're going to try to help him out. So here I go.
Sorry I'm a minute late. I just had 3 people waiting outside my office the second I got off my last call. Honestly, it just never stops, but look, I'm here. Where
Hi,
did we leave off last week?
Hi, Richard. This is Brittany. I'm going to coach you for the next 5 to 10 minutes. I have my phone turned off. I'm completely paying attention to you and what's on your mind today. So I want to know what you would like to discuss today.
Well, Brittany, honestly, I just need to figure out how to get some breathing room. I'm spending my entire day putting out these constant operational brush fires, and I can't find even one uninterrupted hour to work on our new fulfillment strategy. It's like my team can't make a single decision without running to my desk first.
So, Richard, it sounds like you are trying to find some white space in order to do tasks that are not supervisory in nature. Is that right?
Exactly. I have this whole plan to overhaul our outdated fulfillment matrix, which would save us millions, but I'm stuck dealing with warehouse staffing and vendor disputes. It's like I'm the only one who can actually solve these things, and the business will grind to a halt if I don't step in.
So, what would a successful outcome of this quick conversation look like to you, Richard?
Honestly, I just need a real, practical way to stop these constant interruptions so I can actually focus. I don't need more calendar color coding or generic advice about delegating. I just need to know how to get my team to stop dumping every single crisis on my desk so I can do the actual job I'm paid to do.
What have been your thoughts on how to accomplish this?
Well, I've tried blocking off my calendar, but within 15 minutes someone's knocking on my door because a freight pickup was missed. I guess I've thought about just locking my door, but then the work doesn't get done and we lose money. It feels like my only real option is to just jump in and fix it myself to keep things moving.
If you could wave a magic wand and not have people knocking on your door, what would that look like?
Honestly, it would mean my managers actually taking ownership and resolving these issues themselves. I'd be sitting in my office, uninterrupted, finally mapping out the 3-year fulfillment strategy. But in reality, if I'm not the one making the final call, everything just kind of stalls out.
It sounds like, Richard, that you said you have an expectation that your managers are attending to these types of challenges. Is that right?
Yes, absolutely. That's the expectation. But the reality is, when the pressure's on, they just freeze. Or they bring it straight to me because they know I'll get it sorted out fast. I mean, I want them to take the reins, but at the end of the day, it's just easier and quicker for me to step in and do it myself.
Well, I think that might conflict with something you said earlier that, your time is valuable and you've got $1 million upside. So can we talk about what you can do to empower your managers?
Look, I hear you on the empowering thing, but the reality is, when a client's about to walk, I don't have time to coach someone through it. The last time I trusted the process with our Dallas center, they shipped the wrong SKUs, and I had to spend my weekend flying down there to save the account. If I don't step in, we lose real money. So how do I just let them fail?
Richard, I'm hearing two priorities. Number one is the brush fires that you have to put out daily, which are critical to day-to-day operations. And number two, your ability to plan strategically and look to the future. What's the balance between those two things? What's more valuable to you?
Well, when you put it that way, the strategic plan is obviously what's more valuable for the company's future. But the reality is, if I don't put out the daily brush fires, there won't be a future to plan for. It's just, I'm so exhausted from carrying it all. But I don't see another way.
What's a method to break down this impossible challenge?
Honestly, I don't know. I mean, maybe I could identify just one or two specific types of issues, like vendor disputes, and tell the managers they have to handle them. But then, they'll probably just come to me anyway when it gets complicated. I guess I guess I've never really forced them to make the final call without my approval.
What would it look like to delegate that authority to the manager?
I guess it would mean actually telling them, this is your call, don't bring it to me. But honestly, just saying that makes me incredibly anxious. If they make the wrong decision, it's still my neck on the line. And I don't know, maybe I'm just too used to being the one who saves the day.
What would you be willing to relinquish control on to achieve your objectives?
I guess maybe I could start with the warehouse staffing issues. It's tedious, and honestly, my managers should be able to handle scheduling without me stepping in. But it's hard, It's hard to just sit back and watch them struggle when I know I could fix it in 5 minutes.
Well, Richard, I think we've made some good progress. I think you've identified some areas that you're willing to delegate. What are you going to do tomorrow based on what you've told me today?
I suppose tomorrow, when the first staffing issue inevitably comes up, I'll actually stop myself from taking over. I'll tell my manager Marcus that he has the authority to make the call, and I'll ask him how he plans to handle it instead of just doing it for him. It's going to be tough, but I need to start somewhere if I'm ever going to get my head above water.
Well, thank you for your time, Richard. We're going to wrap up here, but if you don't mind sharing what was most valuable about this conversation for you.
Honestly, Brittany, it was just realizing how much I'm actually holding on to these things myself. I've been blaming my team for interrupting me, but I guess I'm the one who's been keeping the door open and making myself too indispensable. It's a tough pill to swallow, but I really need to start letting them step up. Thank you for this.
Well, I commend you on your self-reflection, and I look forward to hearing how your managers are stepping up. Talk soon.
Thank you, Brittany. I really appreciate the support, and I'll definitely let you know how it goes with Marcus tomorrow. Talk soon.
Okay, so I'm hanging up. Just sending some feedback here. I think the call quality was good. Um, and then right now it is analyzing our conversation. So I'll click here to view the analysis to see how the conversation went, how I did with the coaching competencies with the International Coaching Federation. It does take a minute to kind of go through that process.
Yep. So it's looking at the whole transcript. If anybody on the line is familiar, when you kind of take your Teams meeting notes and you say, "Hey, give me some of the taskers based on that." Similarly, we're looking at who's speaking when. Trying to get an overall picture of what the interaction looked like, but then you'll see in a moment when it loads that we've broken it down into all 8 of the ICF competencies. This is the entire transcript. You can see when Brittany was speaking and when Richard was. You can see some of those emotional cues like sighs heavily and things like that. Oh, look, great job, Brittany.
Thanks. I usually try to get an 8 out of 8. I got a 7 out of 8 this time, which is okay. It is a quick conversation for the demo that we're trying to demonstrate the competencies, but generally we like to hone in on the negative ones. So it says awareness is one of those competencies, and this was an area for improvement for me. And at the bottom, well, it's going to give evidence of where you did or did not demonstrate this competence. And at the bottom, some areas for improvement. It said practice asking who questions instead of what. So who on your team have you let handle this instead of what would it look like to delegate? And then Richard mentioned some self-beliefs. And I didn't ask a question about that. So, what's the benefit you get from being the savior? I could have probably gotten to his view of self a little bit if, generally this would be an hour-long session, and I'd kind of take our time getting to some of these emotional topics and let him warm up and just vent all his technical issues, and then we'll get to the emotional part at the end. But, in a quick demo, I could have done a little bit better job of doing that. So yeah, it's great. It shows me where I can improve as a coach. And then for our facilitators, they've got an aggregate look at all of their students and can kind of see like which competencies maybe aren't being addressed very well in the classroom. And then even on the ones where I got a pass, there's still areas for improvement. So I got a 90 on ethical practice. Um, and the area for improvement here was to continue to explicitly state the coaching frame at the beginning of the sessions to maintain clear boundaries. I think when I did my introduction, I didn't use the word coach. And look, I can look back here and see what I said. Oh, I did say I'm going to coach you for the next 5 minutes. I guess I could have defined what coaching is a little bit there and told him, I'm not going to give advice. I'm not going to act as a mentor. I'm not going to act as a consultant, and just kind of reframe what coaching looks like.
Would you go to the dashboard? Maybe we can look at, our scores over time, for example.
Yeah, I'm in a demo
Okay.
dashboard, so I
Yeah,
know how
we'll
many
go.
sessions I have.
So we have, yeah, but if we have multiple sessions, it'll tell you, your coaching mindset went from a 75 to an 80, for example. Um, just so that you can kind of see an aggregate and improve over time if you want to focus on any of the particular competency areas. Uh, do you want to go to the list of personas? Maybe we could just scroll through them or
Yeah, sure. So these are all the personas on our coach
just
app.
go on under select op on the left. Yeah, where it says like personas.
Oh, sorry. Oh, sorry. I'm doing this wrong. Select ops, select the coaching one, and then go to the personas.
Yeah, and then yeah, so we're also kind of grouping them by competency. So, if it is, oh, I want to practice my listen actively or things like that, you can kind of sort. And like I said, each of them is going to give you kind of a different experience. Some of them are open to the idea of coaching. Richard was fairly, amenable to the idea of coaching, but we also have personas that are like, hey, I don't have time to break 30 minutes out of my calendar for this. And so it becomes a little more challenging, but um, thank you. Yeah, I think we got a really good look at the experience of using the platform.
Any questions while we have it up before I stop the share here? Okay, I'm gonna stop my share. You can pull it up if you need to, Lucas, to answer any questions.
Cool.
Yeah, I think when I think of project management, I watch how Lucas and his team are doing software development and how they've structured their sprints. And they really had to redesign their sprint structure in order to make requirements a little less defined because they were knocking the tasks out of the park. They were completing more tasks than we had defined at the beginning of the sprint, but we needed them to be able to be autonomous and keep finding, keep progressing. So we kind of gave some bigger buckets. And what do you call those, Lucas, at the high level? There's stories or?
Epics would be like the big buckets. Yep.
Yeah, so we've given a lot of bandwidth within the epics for the developers to make progress. Matt, you have a question?
Yep. Granted, this is coaching data and not PII or PHI, but in terms of the sensitivity of the conversation, what goes into the data protection, and is that a evolving thing that you're working on, or do you guys think you have it pretty well locked down? Thank you.
Yeah, and I'll start with just like the high level design of how we wanted these personas to operate, that because the role player is a persona, that really the user isn't revealing a lot about themselves. So that was kind of our starting point for, firstly, we just didn't want a ton of vulnerable surface area that we were generating on our platform. So that was part of the design, but Lucas can speak a little bit more technically to how we protect what is on there.
Yeah, and the two biggest things I would say in the direction of security are the organizational security. So, one customer should never be able to access another customer's data, even though the platform supports onboarding multiple organizations. So, um, on the front end side, like if you're on the website, you're not going to be able to click around and see that stuff. But then on the back end side, it's locked down where if you don't have the right organizational status, you're not even going to be able to, query that data or, pull that data, edit it, whatever. It's like it doesn't exist from your perspective. And then the other side of things is role-based access. So in an organization, you might have an admin that's like the course administrator, and they can see multiple students' data in terms of, oh, are they improving over time and what are their scores and things like that. Whereas on the student level, much like the organizational level, like one student won't be able to see another student's data. Um, so yeah, I mean, from the display of things, we're trying to separate it so that, you're only seeing the appropriate things for your organization and your role. But then also on like the encryption and security of the data on the back end, if even if you were, able to circumvent the front end somehow, that we have like role-based security on the database side as well.
And then when you have clients, they'll, like the Department of Air Force owns the data, uh, and then like the one-off for Shuffle Connell, like that's more of an immersive experience. So there's not really any data ownership there. But
Yes, and like Brittany's saying, the ops that we've kind of implemented so far don't have much surface area for, sensitive information and like, medical records and things like that. But in those scenarios, there might be more stringent security over the data and things like that. But yeah, at this point, we're kind of in the more surface level domain in terms of what you're sharing with the app.
great, thank you.
Awesome. Well, we appreciate everyone's time and listening in. This has been a fun project for us. Let's see. Someone asked a
Sure.
question. I'm curious about how well the personas measure empathy or emotional intelligence when coaching gets more sensitive, interpersonal conflicts arise. Does it understand or measure tones well?
Hey, this is Josh Hayden. Sorry, I didn't see a hand raised, but I dropped my question in the chat. Yeah, I was just thinking about the limitations of AI and how well it would understand your responses. And when you were showing your results to your coaching, I don't think I saw, I think there might have been pauses, or I'm sure it can measure things like that. But I was curious about, if there was an ability to measure tones or kind of your empathy responses to a difficult situation. Obviously, that's an important part of coaching. So I was just curious. I might have missed it when you were showing your results.
Yeah, Lucas has built it into the more so on the persona side, that Not only is the sigh, auditory from Richard that we hear him sigh, but that there's an implied emotion behind it. So he's frustrated, he's overwhelmed, all of those things. And then from the coach's perspective, primarily they're being measured on what they say and the words and how they acknowledge the emotion that the client is demonstrating. And this is that metric is pretty aligned with um, how the ICF evaluates coaches. It's based on what you say. So you submit transcripts to get your final test approved with the ICF. So ultimately, they're measuring words. But we do want, there is some emotional attribute on the persona side. Another thing we've done is we have an interrogation persona, and there's this concept in interrogation called closing the space. And you literally get closer to your subject as you're talking with them. You start at the door, you walk over, you sit in the chair, and then you kind of get in their face. So we're working on ways to emote from the user to the persona of, I'm closing the space, I'm letting you stew for 30 minutes, I'm bringing you a coffee, and what those levers that the coach or the interrogator or the interviewer, whatever those things are that are in your power that we can, emote via a button or something like that.
Yeah, and it will evaluate you just based on the transcript, like Brittany was saying, but Richard will respond like, if I chuckle or if I'm like overly sarcastic and things like that. So those things are like picked up, from like my speech to the text. It will tag certain things like my size or if I chuckle or, if I'm yelling versus kind of like having a more measured tone. But it won't affect the analysis, but it could very well affect, how Richard then responds to you if you're rude versus, more professional.
That's helpful. Thanks. During the audit, they were. So you're measuring the words, but not necessarily how they're delivered.
So there's a couple things happening at different layers. So Lucas is saying the conversation is happening and it is measuring tone, volume, um, comedy, etc. The analysis is only analyzing the transcript. So the conversation will generate emotional context, and then the analysis is not doesn't have any emotional input, but it should be present in the words that were spoken. I hope that's helpful. It's just a lot of AI layers. So one is generating the voice, one is generating the words, one is generating the analysis. And 11 Labs, the voice generation software we use, is the one that was used in Star Wars for James Earl Jones. It's also the one that's used on Meta glasses. So 11 Labs is really the leader in this voice space. And we're really excited to see, what kind of innovations that they bring forward to even, improve these nuanced things as we go through time. And no, William, we haven't done any animated personas yet. Um, that's definitely on our roadmap though.
In terms of granted cost structure is, dependent on the solution, and there's not just like a price sheet, but like is this like a subscription model? If somebody has access, is there a cap on how many personas they can use? However, you feel comfortable talking about kind of like, could a boutique coaching firm, like one coach, be able to afford this?
Yeah.
Whatever you could share about that.
Sure, yeah. Right now, we're very committed to our federal government customers, so the Department of Homeland Security, the Department of War, and we're only doing 15 or more licenses at a time. We found B2C is really difficult for us to manage. And, you have to make the individual sales at those levels and kind of maintain payment plans and accounts. But we're charging around $100 per user per month. We're doing discounts when we have like PMO build up on a contract, like, on our senior leader development contract, we have kind of a whole PMO around it. So that kind of augments what we're able to do on costs. But yeah, $100 per user per month. So when we're adding it to a coaching course that might cost, $8,000, it's another $400 for 4 months of Persona Ops access for the student. And then we're giving them unlimited conversations. So some people have had, 32 conversations with personas, some have had one or two. But we're kind of looking at it more from like a cohort-based perspective.
Great. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you guys
Any
for this time.
other questions from attendees, either verbal or in chat?
Looks like William was asking about like in terms of like animation or like, different ways that the persona might, show like when he's speaking and what he's thinking in a visual way. Currently, that technology is starting to become more ubiquitous. It's not the most effective in terms of real time yet. Or in terms of like the amount of latency that we want to allow on the platform to make it kind of snappy and feel like a real-time conversation. But it's definitely something we're thinking about. My IT manager just made a training video with like a voiceover persona that was animated live, and it was pretty impressive. And I was telling him like that's where we're going to be with Persona Ops in the near future, but we're not quite there yet. Thank you for that, William.
Okay, well, no more questions. I can't thank you guys enough. I'm actually in the Air Force class right now using the solution, and was just blown away by the experience, and very grateful and honored that you guys were willing to share the technology and kind of the back end and front end concepts with us.
Awesome. Thank you so much for your time, and we appreciate the opportunity to share.
Yep. Okay, well, for all our members, thank you for being members. Have a great and safe holiday weekend, and hopefully we'll see everyone next weekend onward.
Thanks,
everyone.
Thank you.
Bye. Hopefully next time somebody can answer my questions.
Oh, sorry. What?
I put 3 questions up there. Nobody answered, but that's okay. I will see.
Oh, yep.
Okay.
No, we have time. So I think that was more, does the app evaluate the words or the voice inflection?
So in terms of on the evaluation side, it will only evaluate the transcript, like what words were spoken. But when the persona is deciding what to say next, it will take those things into account. So, sarcasm, anger, emotion, things like that. Or if you, chuckle or sigh or yawn, it will pick those things up. Thanks for that question.
My next one is, do you have a demo on YouTube or where I can get a little bit more information?
I will link one video we have. 1 second.
While he's doing that, since this is, you guys do have competitors in the space, but it's fairly new technology usage. What have you guys learned as a company from kind of being on the cusp of technology like this?
I'll go first. Brittany has lots of thoughts on this as well, I believe. But in terms of development, using AI to aid in creating something like this, it will speed you up a lot, but the bottleneck goes from can you find somebody that knows the right syntax and the right way to set up programming languages and things. It goes from that level of bottleneck to okay, now we have to think more architecturally and make sure we're building things in a way that we can maintain them in a way that's still secure, that's free of bugs and things like that. So you're able to build whatever you imagine very quickly, but taking more time in that planning phase becomes more important, in my opinion.
Great. Is there anything that you guys have that you want to use with the technology that you haven't quite gotten there yet, like a 3 to 5 year vision, or are you just seeing how these proof of concepts go and the feedback that you get back?
We want to have over 100 personas by the end of this year, and we're looking at domains like PMI and different certification paths, kind of using our coaching evaluation framework, but maybe around something more structured, like a course where, okay, practice, these PMBOK ideas with a quick focus conversation. Maybe just talking to an expert that is like the PMBOK expert persona, and then being quizzed on it and things like that. More of a structured course environment for like different certification paths like Security Plus, PMI, and stuff.
Yeah, it's been really interesting just to see AI adoption across the industry and across, the national capital region. And I think one thing we found is we're using it every day and we're becoming kind of advanced users organizationally. Our HR department, our accounting department, we're using some personas for some orientation and for some AI literacy across our organization. So, it's been really fun to kind of use this as a platform to bring people along in AI literacy within our company. I've really enjoyed that part.
Yeah, that would be cool to experience. I guess last question, looking into the future, could you see the technology kind of being used in reverse and the persona is the coach or the therapist, and that takes the human out of the loop in terms of being the professional and that they're the actual client?
Yeah. I mean, as far as the continuum of care, I think certainly there's a lot of underrepresented communities that will inevitably benefit from AI coaches and therapists and counselors. Just because, it's right at your fingertips. You can go to chat.com and probably design yourself a therapist that is aligned with some competencies. And, some would even argue that may be better than a therapist that you can actually meet with in your community. Right now, though, that's not the business we're in. That's not the direction that we want to go. I personally think there's something very special about, another human being committing an hour to you. And that's part of the value of being coached, that, you're being heard out by another human being and they're giving you their precious time. And that's probably going to have a pretty big premium to have human on human time. But I think certainly with self-service portals and, customer service actions you can take care of on your own without talking to someone, I think you'll see a lot of that. But right now we're really focused on the human coach. I don't think we're as a company going to get into human or AI coaching per se, but who knows what the future has in store.
Sure.
William's asking if we've created personas of ourselves. We are creating one of our founder, J.R. Flatter, right now. He wants to kind of be that voice of expertise in terms of coaching for our students. So that's more than likely going to show up within the coaching op at some point in the near future. And we're really interested in that. It's exciting, but it also is a high bar to clear, especially, I know myself, or at least I'll feel, that uncanny valley if it's slightly off. So we're taking kind of a measured approach to that.
Yeah, and you almost have to choose a slice of yourself to represent. You really can't represent your whole self, right? Like, do you want to put all your health information out there, all your quirks, all your weaknesses? So it's almost like a super JR that we're creating, like JR the super coach. So we're gonna really focus on his role as an expert in the coaching competence as his persona. And, he's written a book about coaching. We have hundreds of recorded hours of him coaching, so we have a lot to train it on. But I think a lot of people are kind of creating themselves to, autonomously respond to emails, and that's a particular voice you might want to generate for yourself. And some folks are just doing that via, training on your scent box, but you don't really need it to know how you are as a parent to be able to write a good email on your behalf. So I think when we're building things like this, we're very oriented on like what is the job that persona is going to do.
And then when you're creating a persona, is there a cap on how many traits and attributes they can have? Have you guys found that, like, if it's more than like 20, just as an arbitrary number, like that's too much, or has there not really been a threat
Yeah.
to reach it?
Yeah, there is kind of a limit to how much prose a persona can really analyze as its own identity, and that's something we've played with. And we have some even numerical ways of denoting personality, and it's kind of core psyche. So we've used a psyche called Hexaco, and we've kind of given it scores per the Hexaco categories so that it's kind of core personality is almost like a numerical representation. Um, because yes, I mean you get to a point where if you give it too many words, it can't behave on all of those things. And we're also very careful not to tell it things like you are stubborn, because then over the arc of the conversation, like Richard wouldn't open up and he wouldn't, he'd just be stubborn. So we want to have like room for flexibility and growth and for kind of augmented outcomes as you go through an arc of a relationship and conversation.
Yeah, I could definitely see that. Okay, well, if no other questions, everyone here greatly appreciates your time. This, with your blessing, this will live on in terms of views, and excited for
Yep,
what the future
of
holds.
course. Yeah, share it however you want. Thank you guys. We appreciate the
Yeah,
questions and the engagement.
Thank you guys so
sure.
much.